And
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Glory Glory My Night podcast. I'm your host, as always, Kyle Quinn. And joining me today is Tom Simpson from the United Pubcast. How's it going, Tom?
I'd be lying if I said very well. I'd like to be polite and say all things are well on this side of the world, but unfortunately, like every other Man United fan, after that result, not the best. So, yeah, unfortunately, a lot to sort of go through in regards to negative sort of sides of the game. But yeah, all well, but Man United related, not too good today, unfortunately.
No, definitely not. It was a pretty abysmal performance. And once again, we put in a really terrible performance against a team in the top half of the table. I think the only team away from home that we've beaten in the top half is Fulham, who are 10th, and that took a last gasp Garnacho winner in that game. The rest of the games against the top nine, the only team we've yet to play away from home yet is Tottenham, which I'm not looking forward to now. The rest we've all lost, including Brentford and Brighton, and some of them have been absolute hammerings, as we know. Yesterday could have been another hammering. It was only 2-0, but 2-0 really flattered us. The It was so easy for Newcastle. Um, I think Luke Shaw in the post-match interview questioned the hunger and desire of the United players again, which is pretty scathing, and Ten Hag agreed with him. So, what was your thoughts on the game then, Tom?
Yeah, I think along those lines of look how many times we sort of had this discussion over the last couple of years, and sort of under Eric Ten Hag, one or two times it's been there. You look at Brentford and Liverpool. Sometimes you've had that feeling, but ultimately you never sort of feels like we have turned that corner, and we're not going to sort of have those feelings we did have under Jose, Solskjaer, Rangnick, etc. So I wouldn't sort of be looking at the individuals. Okay, this player is not good enough. We need to sell him. We need to sell that player. Those discussions that were there, but yesterday and they'll be there tomorrow. I'd look past those discussions. I look at what Luke Shaw said, and just in regards to a bit of a reality check, Eric Ten Hag has turned it around with these players, and the players have shown us a little bit more consistency in regards to their right attitude. But ultimately, they are the same players. And you go back to Roy Keane's quote a couple of years ago, saying a leopard won't change its spots. Now, these are the players who sort of have let us down over the years. Now, they have sort of somewhat turned it around this season, of course, but ultimately they are still the same human beings, and a rebuild is going to take time. Part of the rebuild is sticking with the players you do have, and you're going to have to fight through with them at times for a couple of years. And Eric Ten Hag will have to do that, unfortunately. He will have to bring his own players in, who have all the new signings have looked quite well. But ultimately, I do look at I wouldn't even say lack of effort. There was just the difference in attitude between the top teams and other teams. And I think that was shown in terms of, you brought up the away stat in regards to when a team is up for it. And look, every single ground we go to in the country is their biggest game of the season. This was Newcastle's biggest game of the season. Maybe even in terms of their reaction, almost feels bigger than the Carling Cup or the League Cup final the other week. Was absolutely massive for them, and our players just couldn't deal with that. So I wouldn't put it so much down to the effort. Maybe we couldn't in frustration. I'm sure we would. But it was more so the attitude in regards to inability to deal with sort of when things do get tough.
Sorry, just to correct myself, we haven't played Brighton away from home. We actually lost at home to Brighton on the first day of the season. But I'm not looking forward to going away to Brighton again. We all remember last season, that 4-0 loss. And if we play like that, it could be 4-0 again. And we have to play them in the FA Cup semi-final,
Yeah.
which is worrying as well. City certainly got the easier half of the draw in that one. Yeah, so yesterday there's another damning stat, was that United produced 93 sprints compared to Newcastle's 136. So that really summed it up as well. But I think there's other factors at play here, that there's clearly a fatigue issue with the squad. We're probably the busiest team in Europe. We played every possible game. Um, uh, we're missing our first choice midfield pairing. I mean, any team would suffer if their two best central midfielders were missing, Ericsson and Casemiro. And there's the huge issue of the fact that Vikehurst is playing at number 9, and he's totally out of his depth. I'm not blaming him on recent performances, on results, but not having a centre forward of any quality really is hurting the team as well. I think by the 50th minute, I think he had 7 touches in the whole game, which is pretty abysmal. And I think going forward, I think he needs to be benched now. I'm not Martial's greatest fan, but I definitely start him ahead of Veghorst. And even if Martial isn't fit, he could get injured again. Of course, I would play Rashi down the middle. Would you go along with that?
Yeah, at the moment, look, Anthony Martial is back, and it's one of those things. Okay, throw him in the next game. Would any of us sort of be absolutely shocked if he's not available for the next game? I think that is where the issue does become with Anthony Martial. But ultimately, now in regard, and it's as you say, it's not to be too critical of Veghorst, just in terms of what it is. I think he's doing well enough for what he is. But ultimately, if the better footballer is available, fit and available, we've got to the stage now. You do have to play. Now, Eric Ten Hag obviously does see some type of value in Veghorst, and maybe our untrained eye can't see what Eric Ten Hag can see. But ultimately, yeah, it's not to be sort of blaming him. Like I think, as I said, it's not the individuals; it was the collective. But ultimately, now it has got to the stage through no fault of Veghorst, but obviously Anthony Martial and Cristiano Ronaldo not being available. Obviously, we do need to sort of change things up front. And look, Anthony Martial is that player, and if he does, I thought he looked bright enough when he came on today or last night in the UK, and he needs to start now. But then you ultimately come back to the point you did make. Okay, play Anthony Martial. But then, well, when he gets injured next week, well, would Veghorst maybe have benefited from the extra game or potential chance to score a goal? So maybe that is where Eric Ten Hag's thinking, like, Veghorst needs a goal because Anthony Martial won't be available for the next 4 weeks. So I might as well give Veghorst another chance now, which isn't the right attitude. And I'm not saying that's Eric Ten Hag's thinking. But unfortunately, in regards to Martial's fitness issues, that is always in the back of your mind. But yeah, they look not to be critical of Veghorst, but yeah, he looks like, unfortunately, in the last couple of weeks, he looks like a Burnley striker. And for where Manchester United want to be, we need better than Burnley.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't even do well at Burnley. He only scored 2 goals for them as well in the half season. And he looks every bit of that at the moment. He started off really well, really loved his pressing, his work rate, and he got a couple of goals obviously, but now he's not really offering anything. Yesterday he just couldn't get into the game at all. He was really off the pace. Yeah, he's struggling, and I think there's no way that Ten Hag meant to start him in every game when he brought him
No,
in, and that's the way it's transpired because of obviously
that's where you
loss of time.
feel a little bit for him, and like because it's not his job. He wasn't brought in to do this job, and he's had to, and he's given his all. So us here as fans, who we can't do a better job than Veghorst, he's a better footballer. He's given his all. Like, who are we to criticise in terms of ultimately the facts are the facts? He's not good enough quality wise, but that's through no fault of his own doing. Like, he's given his all. Definitely wasn't the job he was brought in to do. And I think that you can say that for a lot of the players in terms of how thin our squad does look at times, in terms of the way, especially in recent seasons, the way we've relied on certain players in certain areas. Well, it really shouldn't be their job, and that obviously is a discussion towards the recruitment, towards the owners, towards the Glazers, etc., which sort of addresses those issues. So that is where I steer away from sort of blaming. I don't know, you're not doing the same, but blaming individuals. I think it's one of those things that this is where you can really look at the collective and the position the higher ups have put the team in.
Yeah, I do like the guy. He's an honest bloke, and he gives 100%, but just really lacking in quality, unfortunately. But like you alluded to there, um, the reason why we're making loan signings in January is because of the hierarchy, not wanting to spend because they're thinking of selling the club, which they might not do. Um, but yeah, our squad is really thin. We have a number of injuries at the moment, and obviously a big suspension, most important player of all, and we're struggling. And we're playing so many games. Like I said, we've played every game possible so far this season, and we don't have the squad to cope with it. And these loan signings were not good enough to help us out. Sabitzer maybe a wee bit more so than Veghorst, but ultimately we haven't brought in the quality that we needed in January. Um, just looking at the stats yesterday was pretty damning as well. Somehow we actually had more possession, which I'm surprised at, 54%. But Newcastle had 22 shots on goal. We only had 6. They had six on target, and we had one, which was a very team effort from Anthony. Might as well be a pass back to the goalkeeper. Although one thing I will say is that Anthony was probably our best player on the day.
Oh,
It's
that's what it is
very
as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think he was unlucky to be substituted, and it brings me on to another point. I think Ten Hag made two batches of substitutions, and just before both of those, we were actually gaining a wee bit of momentum. We were putting Newcastle under a wee bit of pressure, but as soon as he made the subs, it made us worse, and we went back to square
Mhm.
one again. And that happened on both occasions. And then, obviously, when he brought on Anthony and Sancho, it happened, and then he made that those ultra attacking subs and around about the 82nd minute, and that totally backfired. It was a huge gamble to go for it like that. He took off both centre halves. He only brought on one. He brought on Palistri as well. It was, and even Gary Neville was alluded to it in the commentary that he's never seen a team win when they're playing with one centre back.
Mm.
And then Luke Shaw gives away a free kick, and then they score from the free kick, and that's game over. Yeah, so that ultra attacking gamble didn't really pay off. So what did you make of Ten Hag's substitutions yesterday?
Yeah, ultimately two parts. In regards to that gamble, I think that's what it is. Sometimes the gambles come off, sometimes they don't. I think that's why we do call it a gamble. This one, well, I wouldn't say panicked, but in terms of, yeah, might as well, okay, what we're doing is not working. Let's change it. Let's throw everything at it. Today it didn't work. Another day it comes off and we sort of force home an equaliser. We say, what a tactical genius. So it didn't work today. Eric Ten Hag will be the first to put his hand up and say that. In regards to earlier subs, I tend to agree in terms of, yeah, we're kind of looking okay, and then the subs happen. You think, well, now we don't look better. But ultimately, I think that just comes down to football. How many times this season has Eric Ten Hag made the substitution and we look better? I just think ultimately today, football, okay, it's a team game, but it's made up of individuals. And today, one or two individuals, again, not to be blaming of them, but I wouldn't put it all down to Eric Ten Hag in regards to these subs. Another day they come off and they work. Today they didn't. So look, I think the positive thing about Eric Ten Hag, he'll be the first to put his hands up and say that's my responsibility. If that was Jose Mourinho, he'd be in the press conference blaming the substitutions, not being ready, etc. So ultimately, it's nothing to sort of worry about. But I think today was just one of those. I don't want to say one of those days because over the years we've had so many of one of those days. But this one did feel like it for me. And the players have to take responsibility for not being up for it. But I just felt after the first 5 minutes, just felt Newcastle are up for this and we're not. And everything Newcastle were doing was sort of coming off. And that time, the Bruno Fernandes penalty shout wasn't a penalty shout, but what Bruno Fernandes was asking for was how's that not a corner? Because the defender has put it in row Z, and it got given a goal kick. I'm just that's what little decisions like that. Not to be blaming the ref at all. Like, we're by far the second best team, but it just wasn't our day. And when that happens, and the Newcastle, to be fair to them, were brilliant. I mean, if you're not at it and the other team's brilliant at this level, you're going to lose and lose handsomely. And as I said at the start, it could have been more than 2-0.
Like you say, we really struggle when we're playing away from home. There's a raucous atmosphere. The home team are really up for it, and we just don't see we don't seem to be able to match their intensity, which is hugely frustrating. This has happened time and time again. Um, and our form since the I was going to say Carling Cup final, the Carabao
I
Cup
always say
final.
Carling Cup.
Yeah. It's been abysmal. We've had three league games since then. We conceded nine and scored none. I know we easily dispatched of Real Betis in that time, and we won in the FA Cup. But let's be honest, we won the FA Cup because of Fulham's self implosion, with the
Mm.
two red cards. We got away with it that day as well. We were comprehensively outplayed by Fulham at home. Um, but yeah, we look like a team that's running out of steam, which is worrying. We've just played the first of nine games in April, and I'm saying we're running out of steam. You know, it's not looking great, is it? But somehow we're going to have to find some energy from somewhere.
But the thing
And
is, for the past couple of months, we've been saying this is coming. Now it's coming. Now it's okay, how are we going to deal with this? And this is just as fans. This is what the players in Eric Ten Hag have to deal with. And I'm just thinking, I don't know what to expect over the next month because Eric Ten Hag sort of does turn things around well after disappointment. But him and the players are only human. So, look, it is a good season. We are having a very good season. And we're definitely on the right path in regards to Eric Ten Hag and these players. But tricky time ahead.
yeah, we're still on course for the Mickey Mouse treble, which is obviously a
Yeah.
positive. But would you say that we are in danger now of missing out on the top four. It probably won't. It won't matter as much if we win the Europa League, but I'd rather
Yeah.
finish in the fourth or third spot.
Oh, look, there's no doubt, and there's teams that, yeah, there's no doubt that top four is in danger, but there's teams who I don't know who's fifth, sixth, seventh, probably like your Liverpool, Brighton, Tottenham sort of thing. That they're having far more inconsistent seasons than us. So the discussion we're having at the moment, so could we throw this away? They're definitely having that discussion. They've been having that for months. So when we drop a result, they're going to drop a result as well. We have to be there to capitalise when they do. Make sure we do get those wins. I think ultimately what will, and it's not to sort of write home about and celebrate, what might save us is the inconsistencies of those teams below us. In terms of they're doing everything they can not to make top four. And we've been in that position before, to times when we've been in sixth or seventh and we sort of drop silly points at home. You think, oh, what could have been in our chase for top four? I think that's teams like Liverpool this season. So ultimately, we are in a far better position. They do have to be careful. We lose one or two more games and they win one or two behind us. Obviously, that does change things. But look, it's tricky. I'm confident at top four. And ultimately, look, in 20 years' time, I'm not going to look back at this season and think, oh, that was a good season when we finished fourth. Tricky season. We got the job done. I'll be looking at a Carabao Cup final and maybe an FA Cup final. You remember the trophies. So ultimately, my focus is sort of on the silverware and potentially adding to that. Now, ultimately, in terms of next season, we do need Champions League football. So I understand the importance of top four. But tricky time for Eric Ten Hag and the players now in terms of sort of juggling those priorities.
Yeah, if we were offered the chance to either win the League Cup final or win yesterday, that we would have chosen the cup
Oh,
final
yeah.
100 times out of 100.
Yeah.
So Newcastle can have their wee revenge if they want
And
to.
and ultimately, to take away the names of Manchester United and Newcastle, I know Newcastle are a big club, but over the last 30 years, take away the names and the stature of the clubs. Ultimately, look at the facts now. Now, I know the ladder has changed off the back of this result, but look at the ladder and the fact they're in third, we're in fourth. I'm not saying they're better, but the facts say they're better than us. We just lost at home to a team that's better than us. It's not a crisis sort of thing. Now ultimately that's sort of, it's not as black and white as that, but ultimately this wasn't away at, I don't know, Southampton. It wasn't away at Bournemouth sort of thing. I think these are the things. Newcastle, while I don't think are fantastic, we do need to give them a little bit of credit, and they deserve to win. And look, they put United. They were sort of a big factor in why United performed so poorly, but. You do have to give Newcastle a little bit of credit. That's not to sort of deflect it away from the negativity around Manchester United's performance, of course not. But Newcastle are a good team. Not often teams will go there and win. I'm not sure how many teams. I think they've pretty much won every game there, or sort of haven't dropped too many points there. I think maybe only one loss, potentially, or maybe even undefeated. I'm not sure. But yeah, disappointing, but yeah, not the end of the world for me.
Yeah, it's certainly not the end of the world. But we need to get 9 points from the next three league games, which is Brentford at home, Everton at home, and Forest away. Would you be looking at 9 points from those three games?
Oh, look, you have to. Now, ultimately, football's a funny game. You could see a situation in any of those games over the years where we've dropped points in those games, maybe even lost. But what we've also seen in this season, where we've beaten teams like that, we've also got the 3 points. So ultimately, it'll come down to one the day. Today, the players weren't at it for whatever reason. It's not to excuse it, but that happens. That happens to the best teams. In the league, sometimes it's not your day. We need to be going forward, whether it be in the short term or the long term, to limit those types of days. They've been far too common over the years. And I'm starting to creep back in, whatever the reasons, they are creeping in. So confident at 9 points. Look, 9 points out of nine in the Premier League is always hard. If you go on a run of winning 3 games in a row, you're in very good form. So ultimately, that doesn't happen too often. Usually, you drop points somewhere in there, even if you are doing quite well. But in terms of the need for 9 points, it is there. So uh, I wouldn't lose any sleep with 7 points out of nine in regards to, as I said, the inconsistencies behind us. But look, I would be expecting or hoping for the 9 points.
Yeah, I think probably the next one is the most difficult one on paper.
Yeah.
Brentford at home because they're flying high and seventh in the table, punching above their weight.
Thank God
But
it's at home. That's a big thing.
yeah, because look what happened in the away game. Hello, that was before our transfer window was completed. I suppose we have to take that into account. But yeah, the last two games of Casemiro's suspension are two home games.
Yeah.
Um, and we've been lucky that 3 of the 4 have been home games. So hopefully we can get the points in those. And Forest away, I know we struggle away from home, but that's the type of away game we should be winning.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Yeah, it doesn't have
Um,
that feel of a even Goodison Park away potential. I know he sort of played there earlier in the season, but it doesn't have that feel, Forest.
yeah, and we won very comfortably there in the League Cup semi-final. So
Yeah.
hopefully we can replicate that in the league. So just a quick rundown of the player ratings. So David De Gea, probably, yeah, one of our best performers on the day. He made
Yeah.
some good saves, one miraculous save from point blank range onto the crossbar. Um, so yeah, he would get a 7. Dallo was ran ragged by Said Maximan. I think he had to play it a necessity, Dallo, because Wan-Bissaka was ill. Otherwise, I think Wan-Bissaka would have played. And he did a really good job in the second half in the League Cup final against Saint Maximin. But Dallo really struggles against the tricky wingers with pace like that. So probably only a 3 for Dallo. Varane, probably a 5. Martinez, a 5. Luke Shaw, a 5. Going to be a lot of these. McTominay, a 5. Sabitzer, a 5. Rashford, 5. Really, really struggled to get into the game. Bruno, another 5. I think I give Anthony a 6. I thought he was slightly better than the rest of them. And Weghorst, probably a 3 as well. Just hardly any touches at all in the game. And the substitutes, I thought Sancho had no impact at all. He would get a 4. Martial slightly better. I'd probably give him a 5 for his impact, and the others were very late on in the game, so can't really give them a rating. Lindelof did very poorly for the second goal, I must say, and Luke Shaw needlessly gave another free kick away with that foul in the corner. And Ten Hag with his substitutions didn't work today, so yeah, it's probably a 5 for Ten Hag. I'm afraid. Yeah, very very disappointing day. We need to move on quickly. And the good news is we've got another game on Wednesday night, and we can just out of interest. What time in Australia would the Brentford game be? Is that more suitable to you?
Well, the clocks have actually changed. I forgot. Obviously, your clocks changed the other week. I'll just check now in regards to my fixtures. I think there's a 9 hour difference now. So usually the morning games are 7 a.m. In regards to the night games in the UK. Usually they're morning, usually 7 a.m. games here. But now that the clocks have changed, or just 5 a.m. on Thursday morning. Which look, as bad as that is, that's not actually too bad. You set the alarm for 5, you get up with a bit of breakfast, then the match finishes at 7, and you're right to go to work. And I think the same is for Sevilla. Sevilla as well will be 5 a.m. So and it has also made the weekend games a little bit better. This game against Everton is a lunchtime kickoff at Old Trafford. That is prime time for United fans in Sydney. That's the best possible kickoff. That's 9:30 at night. Now that the clocks have aligned, that's the best kickoff we do get here. So fingers crossed they can make it an enjoyable Saturday night for us on this side of the world.
Yeah, 9:30 on a Saturday night. That's perfect. For a football fan.
The last time we were in the pub was against Newcastle, and that was 3 a.m. on a Monday morning for the cup final. So that's usually what we had to deal with on Monday, because so many of our games are Sundays in the UK, which for here are Monday mornings. And you just have to do the maths for the time difference. Never friendly, but this week against Everton is one of the fewer season which do work in our favour.
Yeah, it's almost like at the same time as what a boxing match would be on. Is it 9:30 in the evening? Although, yeah, the main event probably a bit later than that. And I know,
Mm.
yeah, we were like a boxer yesterday that had been in a war for 11 rounds and was dead on his feet.
Yeah.
Because we played nearly 50 games this season, and it could be about could it be 64 games by the end of the season? It's crazy stat that.
Could
Um,
potentially be the absolute maximum in regards to Carabao Cup semi-finals, 2 legs, FA Cup all the way. Europa League had that extra round of 32 fixture, so it could technically set some type of record potentially.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's all down to that Barcelona playoff, which we
Yeah.
didn't need to be in. But now I'm glad we were in it because it's great to get one over on a massive team like that are top of the Liga.
Hmm.
So
Oh,
not
yeah, it's
so
the price you pay for moments like that. Okay, you don't need that, but then ultimately, what a moment it was in terms of great performance. The way the new camp remember Anthony's goal at Old Trafford. It's one of those ones. Okay, we're maybe paying the price for it now in regards to a few sore heads and sore legs, but at the time, like, how are you going to say no to that?
yeah, you wouldn't swap that for anything as a supporter, that's for sure. But yeah, the fixture list is absolutely enormous. And please, please, no more Casemiro suspensions. Let that be an end to it for this season at
Yeah.
least. Um, and if it wasn't for VAR, none of these suspensions would have happened. Kind of wishing that VAR wasn't around anymore, because could you imagine how
It's
many
a
red
thing
cards?
about and
And
yeah,
sorry,
well,
Roy
it's a thing
Keane.
about Casemiro, and not to be Roy Keane, he would have been missing half a season, sort of thing. A lot of players back then, but and it's not to be critical of Casemiro because, as I said, that the Reds are somewhat harsh, and he doesn't sort of deserve the suspensions. But the facts are the facts. He has been suspended for is it 8 games event all up. I think there's one yellow card suspension and then the 2 straight reds. So I think 7 in regards to the Reds and 1 for an accumulation of yellows. 8 games now, again, harshly treated by the referee, I think, at times. So he doesn't deserve that amount. But the facts are the facts that he has missed 8 games through suspension. And look, that's not to look at Casemiro's position at the club and say we should get rid of him. Of course not. But it is something to look at. Well, when we look at Anthony Martial's fitness record, you got to look at someone's disciplinary record. And not to be critical of him, but it is a question we should be having as Man United fans.
Yeah, yeah, like I was saying, if VAR existed 20 years ago, Roy
Yeah,
Keane would, yeah, he'd miss out the season, wouldn't he? But I'm just afraid now that Casemiro's card could be marked by referees. That
that's what I mean. Yeah,
anytime he goes to ground now, I'm
yeah,
thinking, oh no, 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 there's going to be a
yeah.
check on this. So yeah, it's something to worry about. But if he's going to miss games like this through suspension, throughout his United career, we're going to have to bring in an alternative to Casemiro. I think we're going to have to do that anyway because he can't possibly play every game. And when he misses games, the drop off is enormous. So that should be a priority this summer, bringing an alternative to Casemiro. Although Laurie Whitwell and David Ornstein from the Athletic were saying that United's priorities are obviously a striker, a number 8, and an attacking right back. A number 8 obviously doesn't replace or doesn't give us an alternative to Casemiro. So I would probably be looking to bring in 2 midfielders. Well, maybe one if he keeps Sabitzer, and then the other one would be a number 6 for me. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, look, it's one of those ones in terms of we have such a discussion around transfers. Okay, sell this player and buy this player, and ultimately, Man United will need to look at financial sort of fair play regulations in regards to balancing the books because we have had a big outlay over the last year or two in regards to some big money signings, and we're going to need big money signings this one. So it will be interesting in terms of the outer. There's a lot of discussion around Scott McTominay, but I'm sure the club are weighing up Scott McTominay and Fred in regards to sort of value for money and sort of assets. So look, I expect one of Fred and McTominay to potentially be sort of approached by the club and say, look, we're looking at potentially accepting one of these bids. What are your thoughts? So I think ultimately at the moment I'm sitting here and say, yes, we need to bring 2 midfielders in. Suddenly if you sell Fred or McTominay, well, suddenly you need 3 midfielders. So it is something that's definitely going to need addressing whether there's any outgoings or not.
Yeah, definitely. But even though we just lost yesterday convincingly again, I'm not. It's not like the previous, like many of the previous summers since 2013, where you're like, oh, we need 8 or 9 signings. I think
Yeah.
we need 3 quality additions now, to strengthen the squad. There are clearly weak areas within the starting 11, and we need to address those, and then we can mount a title challenge next season if we do that. I mean, what a difference a quality centre forward would make right away. And there's so
The
many.
difference for me, the priority for me, 100. I know that there's weak areas we can improve, especially in regards to squad depth. The idea for me, it's 100% has to be a striker. Now I know there's a huge debate: is it Harry Kane? Is it Osman? Is it someone else? That's a debate for another day. But ultimately, if you have a striker in there who's going to get 20, 25 goals, um, yeah, it changes everything for Man United.
Yeah, so many exciting options. Another one of the options scored yesterday is 25th goal of the season for Benfica, and Gonzalo Ramos, who got that hat trick in the World Cup, as everyone knows. So he's absolutely flying. So like, so there's so many names being linked, and among those are Kane, like you said, Osman, um, uh, Ramos, and even a left field option in the Irish fella, Ivan Ferguson. Um, which one of those four would you choose, or is there someone else you'd prefer?
The Ferguson shout from Brighton's very interesting. I'd love United to sort of sign another Irishman. I think it's been far too long without it, but obviously not bringing him in to sort of lead a title charge. But I think you bring him in anyway. Now, unfortunately, in the modern game, that type of signing, in our minds, we think that's a £5-10 million pound signing. In reality, that's a 50-60 million pound signing now. Unfortunately, that's just in terms of the way the market works. But in terms of that main man up front, the number 9, for me, a lot of people disagree, but for me, it's Harry Kane. I think people talk to his injury record. I look at it and think, well, his injury record still has him top of the goal charts every single season. So for me, Harry Kane is that person, and I can see a situation where a little bit different to Robin van Persie, but to tie Arsenal into the discussion. Arsenal win the title. We bring sort of Arsenal's most hated striker in Harry Kane to the club and sort of take Arsenal's title off them. So I do see a story where Harry Kane comes and is that difference maker like Robin van Persie was. If it eventuates or not, I'm not sure. A lot of people sort of steer away from Kane. For me, he is that man.
Yeah, I certainly won't complain if Harry Kane comes in, and if he's partnering up with Rashford, that's certainly a mouth-watering prospect. Just one caveat to that is that I'll put it to you: are you a bit worried that we've signed Casemiro, who's 31, Ericsson, who's 31, um, a lot of our Varane is coming to that age as well. The spine of our team would be all in their 30s if Harry Kane comes in, and obviously De Gea
Oh,
as well.
it's a discussion to be had. Obviously, the discussion is there, and value for money. You can argue, well, is it better getting someone cheaper but not as good? But I mean, the long term potentially, that's a very valid discussion. Ultimately, a trophy. I remember a Premier League title for regardless of the player's age. If you bring in Harry Kane and Ferguson from Brighton, and Harry Kane wins your Premier League title, well, Ferguson's going to be a better player in 3 or 4 years from that experience. So that is where he just don't bring in one player. You can still address that age issue by bringing the next player in. But ultimately, you need to win along the way. Robin van Persie was brought in not for 3 or 4 years down the track. He was brought in to win that season. And then, yes, in terms of Sir Alex Ferguson left, and you look at that squad and think, okay, wasn't left in the best shape. But we remember what 12-13 season felt like as we won it. So there are valid discussions to have around value for money with Harry Kane and his age, of course. But in regards to winning football matches next season, I think he is a huge improvement to what we have. And that's ultimately, as a fan, all I need.
Yeah, if we're in a scenario in 3 years' time where we have to replace the whole span of our team in one window, I'll take it if it means that we've won a Premier
Yeah.
League title in that time. But yeah, I think it's probably unlikely that we'll sign those two strikers in the same window, because that would be 150 million plus to bring both of those in at the same time. So I don't see that happening.
I just look at it in regards to the tricky spot, and Manchester United have played their part in this, and some through our wrongdoing, some unfairly. But who's that? In our minds, we're saying bring in a backup striker. So in our minds, we're thinking old school in terms of, okay, 15, 20 million pound striker. Who is that 15, 20 million pound striker to be that backup striker? It's simply no one. It's either the top, it's either world class or it's Weghorst on loan. We're not getting someone in the middle who's going to do that job we need as a backup striker. And that's just the way I see it. You're either going to spend 100 million on a striker, or you're going to get Weghorst on loan. I don't think there is a middle ground, and ultimately, that is, fortunately, you do look at Ferguson, the young bright player. He's going to cost a lot of money, and he can't come in as the first choice. But if you miss out on him and he goes to, let's say, a Tottenham or something to replace Harry Kane, well, then you think, well, we could have got him for 30, 40 million now. In 2 years' time, he's going to be the next Harry Kane. He's going to be 100 million. So that's a discussion for the financial men at the club, and they need to make the right decision. Whether they will or not, who knows?
Would you gamble on bringing Ferguson in as the number 9 signing, the main number 9 signing? Would you gamble that?
Uh, Look, for me, I wouldn't hate it. Just the way I like football. I like Manchester United giving people like that a chance. When I'm saying I'd support him and I'd fall in love with him. Would that be the right decision if I was sort of with my thinking hat on? Probably not. I don't think that would be the right decision to do. But look, if he was brought in and Anthony Martial, I could guarantee Anthony Martial was fit for 35 of the 38 Premier League games. I think, well, yeah, we could do worse. Is Anthony Martial going to be fit for that? Of course not. So that ultimately changes the opinion of just signing Ferguson. But that is where I think you do have to go for that sort of guarantee, so-called guarantee of goals, which I think Harry Kane is the closest to that.
Yeah, we shall see what Ten Hag decides on, or what money's available, and who we get. Because I'm sure none of those targets are going to be easy to prize
Yeah,
away from their clubs. They'll all be looking. They'll require huge fees. Probably Ferguson less so, but Ramos, Osimhen, and Kane will all command 80 million plus, and
yeah.
probably upwards of 100. So we have a member of the Toon Army in the chat here. He says, "Fair play, lads. We won today, but you got the cup. Let's see how the rest of the season plays out. A few twists and turns left. Take care." Um, yeah, Newcastle. They look like they're going to drop out of the running for the top four, but they're back in it again, aren't they? And a huge danger to our place in the Champions League spots.
Oh, yeah, today. Next week they might lose and we win, and then suddenly they look like they're fallen. Liverpool might win 2 games in a row. Tottenham might lose 3, which they probably will. As I said, for us, we're going to have more disappointing games this season, and we're going to have better games as well. The Newcastle's, they're going to drop a few points. They're going to win a few. So ultimately, who knows how it will play out. There are those races everywhere, whether it be relegation, title, or top 4. For the neutrals, obviously good viewing. For the United fans, a little bit stressful. But concerned in regards to what's behind us in that chase. But ultimately, from what Eric Ten Hag has shown me, I would have to say I'm still pretty confident.
Yeah. And once again, if we're offered the chance of beating Brighton at Wembley or beating Brighton in the league, it's Wembley all day long, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Oh yeah, no. For me, and that game sort of worries me. I sort of back us against City in the final at Wembley over Brighton at Wembley. Weirdly, just one of those things as a football fan. But yeah, look, ultimately, and look, you throw up the discussion: would it be a successful season if Eric Ten Hag wins 2 trophies? Let's say we lose the Europa League, we finish 5th, but have 2 trophies. Yeah, okay, there's 2 trophies, but we don't have Champions League football. And no, I don't know what the correct answer is there, because for me it is about trophies, but I obviously see the need and the benefit of having Champions League football. It's a never-ending debate, but look, interesting times ahead. Definitely, just as disappointing as this is, could you imagine last season or 2 seasons ago if we lost away at Newcastle, what the reaction would have been? I remember probably one of the most toxic reactions was, I think, after a Newcastle defeat. Potentially, I think one of the Longstaff winner up at Newcastle, I think that was when a lot of the fans really had a big turn against a lot of the players. And ultimately, we've had a disappointing defeat, but we can see the direction and the positives, unlike previous seasons where when we lost, it was an absolute disaster.
If we do finish fifth and win 2 trophies, which obviously I hope not, the silver lining will be that the Glazers will just have to sell then, because
Yeah,
it'd be a massive loss of income to have 2 seasons outside of the Champions League. I think even, for example, the Adidas money
yeah,
will be cut in that scenario. Once you have 2 seasons outside of Europeans league competition, and you mean we've already discussed. I'm sure everybody has, to do with the fact that the income is drying up. They haven't got many more avenues to borrow money. We're nearly £1 billion in debt. They can't possibly get any more
yeah.
loans or mortgages. So if we're outside of the Champions League once again, then surely they have to go and take whatever's on offer.
Yeah, no, I completely agree there. But I'll throw the question to you, and so steering back to sort of what a successful season is. Has this debate with a few friends in regards to how we're going to deal with Arsenal fans if Arsenal win the league. I believe Arsenal will win the league now. Ultimately, what would you say? I think Arsenal is the right decision or the correct answer here, but it is interesting. Who would you say has the better season here? If Arsenal win the Premier League or Manchester United win 3 cups? So if Manchester United win the Europa League, FA Cup, and League Cup, there's 3 trophies. Let's call it a treble. It's some type of treble. I know it's the Premier League, and Arsenal sort of would rightfully celebrate that and say that, and I wouldn't disagree. But what for you would be a better season?
I think if I'm honest, Arsenal would still have the better season there. I think if you want to make a comparison, 2001 when we won the league and Liverpool won the Mickey Mouse
Liverpool.
treble, as we called it,
Yeah,
you'd have to say we had the better season. There's no way
yeah,
we would concede that they had a better season back
yeah,
in 2001. So I have to be consistent and say that
yeah,
I think that the Premier League and the Champions League are the two elite
yeah,
trophies. winning three of the other trophies, it doesn't compensate for that. So yeah, I would have to say Arsenal. But given where we were back in May, or even back in August, to win three trophies, I'd have snapped your hand off for that. That'd be an amazing season.
That's
So
where I think I'm coming from in regards to where our expectation was and where we were as a club. So to turn that around and win three in a season, like again, I think Arsenal is the right decision, right answer in that. But from where we were and the job Eric Ten Hag has had to do, if it ever came up in a Twitter debate or something, I'll definitely argue for Man United and Eric Ten Hag's treble.
but I can just see what Arsenal fans would say back to that. They've got
Oh yeah, no, I think
an
Arsenal are
easy.
correct in it, but yeah, I'd fight the corner.
Yeah, and I do think that they will win the Premier League as well. And I've been back and forth as to what's the least worst option out of City
Yeah,
and Arsenal. Now, the only reason why I begrudge Arsenal winning the league is because their fans are so vocal, and it could be hard to listen to, particularly on social media.
yeah,
City, the reason why I don't want them to win is I don't want them to do the three in a row, which we're the only
yeah.
Premier League team to do that. Um,
I think
so
that's where it comes out, and I sit exactly where you are in regards to. I don't want City to do it because of, and they look unfortunately still on for a treble. And we don't want to say that, but they are. But if they are to do that in that three in a row, that obviously hurts and takes something away from what Manchester United have. But ultimately, if City do win the league, Manchester United could put out on social media Facundo Pellistri signs a new contract, and that would be back page news over a Manchester City title. Like that's not taking the piss. That's what would happen. We could sort of deflect away from it very quick, and it would be forgotten about quite quickly in regards to the attention on social media, where Arsenal fans you can't escape them, unfortunately. You're never going to hear the end of it, and rightly so. You'd have to say fair play to them, but there would be a lot of you could get away from the City discussion. The Arsenal discussion will be in your face every day, and yeah, as a fan, that wouldn't be enjoyable.
Yeah, City winning the league now is almost routine.
Yeah,
It doesn't really hurt anymore. But I don't want them to do the three in a row though. Yeah, and Arsenal fans are very hard to escape. But if I'm being absolutely neutral in this, a new team winning the Premier League, as well, certainly the first time in 20 years would be a good thing for the Premier League.
as much as
Um,
we don't like Arsenal and probably hate Arsenal to an extent, they are a good club. Like, okay, we look at their fans in regards to recent seasons, but ultimately, as a traditional football club, they're a good club, and yeah, I wouldn't begrudge them over City.
yeah, and a team winning the league without financially doping is certainly to be applauded as well. So it'd be like a pure Premier League win,
Yeah.
if you like. um, yeah, so I couldn't begrudge them of it if they win it. I know they're going to be hard to listen to on social media, but they'll deserve it if they win it, and it would be so unexpected as well. Many of the pundits were tipping Arsenal to finish outside the top four, so for them to win the Premier League would be huge.
Over the course of
Um,
the season, where you finish, that's where you deserve. If you finish seventh, you deserve to finish seventh. If you win the league, I don't think there's ever been one club who won, correct me if I'm wrong, one club who's won the league who didn't deserve to win it. Every single season, the best team wins it, and ultimately, yeah, no, I think that will be, at the moment. If the league is stopped tomorrow, who's been the best team? Regardless, even if say City were 1 point ahead, you'll still say Arsenal probably been the best team, and I think they will get what they deserve.
yeah, I think so. And we don't want the Premier League to turn into the Bundesliga or the Scottish Premiership, where one team dominates every single year. And if City got three in a row, we're going down that path. So it'd probably be good from a purely neutral point of view to see a new team win the league, because it's obviously been nearly 20 years since Arsenal won the league.
Yeah.
Um, and it certainly gives us hope then that City can be overcome for next season.
I think
When
the patience Arsenal have stuck by in regards to Arteta and their hierarchy is a good lesson for Man United. In regards to there will be maybe next season under Eric Ten Hag will go backwards. Maybe we might finish fifth or sixth off the back of other teams doing well, but you'd have to stick with him. And I think ultimately we can learn, as painful as that is, to look at Arsenal in those type of eyes. We do have to look and sort of look at the patience in terms of the belief in what the manager was doing and stick with him. So I think we can sort of take a leaf out of Arsenal's book in regards to Ten Hag's dream of a Premier League trophy.
Yeah, definitely. We have to be patient with Ten Hag. I'm convinced he's the right man, and we need to give him time and give him the resources, obviously, as well. So we'll wrap it up there. And if everyone could please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and get your comments and thoughts in down below. And it's been a pleasure to have you back on again, Tom.
Yeah, always, mate. Well, unfortunately, off the back of that 2-0 defeat, get me back on after a 2-0 victory. But yeah, always a pleasure chatting United.
Yeah, hopefully next time we're on, it's after a victory.
Yeah.
Maybe sometime between now and the end of the season, I'll have you back on.
I'm sure there'll be many victories. So anytime, mate.
Okay, then. See you later.
See you, mate.